Hello, everybody, and welcome to the forum today. I am so excited to be here. My name is Fee Mackinnon, as I said. And so we are really excited to have everyone here. We have an incredible group of panelists. When students are career ready, what does that actually mean? And what does that look like? Does it mean they're equipped with the tools needed to enter the workforce the moment the tassels turn on that mortarboard? Or are they ready to punch a clock and start earning a living wage out the door? Or does it simply mean that they're ready for any challenge that life throws at them and they have the tools to thrive in a world that is quickly changing around them? For 14 years, I served as the principal of MC² STEM High School, and now I work in the city doing some of the broader tasks here in Cleveland, trying to bring career readiness to the community. Every day, I'm presented with new challenges that our students are going to encounter, and I'm constantly asking, what can I do to ensure that no student leaves my care unprepared? And how can I build a culture that works for my kids? High school culture drastically changed over the years, and those changes were accelerated by the pandemic. In the chaos of so much newness, many school leaders have risen to the challenge and found a unique and incredible way to build supporting career-ready cultures. Today, our incredible group of panelists will share with you their ideas and best practices around school-ready or high school career-ready school culture. Sorry, that is difficult to say. As I introduce our panelists and you get to know them, I encourage you to use the chat function to participate in our conversation today. And I humbly ask that you bear with us through any technology and issues that we have, as we have the true honor of being the first group to go for this virtual forum. So please bear with us. Okay, so let's get started by introducing our group today. I see that many of you are introducing yourself in the chat box. I want to encourage all of our guests to continue to do so and give us your name and title so we know who we're talking to. But for now, I want to better understand school culture. So after I introduce each of you, I would love for you to tell us what career-ready culture looks like in your organization. So thumbs up from our panelists. We are ready to get started? All right, great. So I'm going to start with Mr. Rashid Ferrod Davis. He is the founding principal of Pathways in Technology Early High School, or PTech, a little bit easier to say, which opened in 2011. PTech is a grade 9 through 14 model with a pathway from high school to college to career in industry. He is a true educational innovator. Mr. Davis, can you please tell us a little bit more about you and PTech and answer the question, what does career-ready culture look like to you?
Thank you so very much for the introduction. And PTech is the intersection of high school, college, and industry. And so it really is about creating pathways that allow students to seamlessly go from high school to college, paid internships, and then to be first in line for job opportunities with the industry partner. Our particular college partner is the largest public school on the Northeast, New York City College of Technology, and the industry partner is IBM. So when we talk about career readiness, it's not just about the regurgitation of facts, but it is about a pathway that allows students to go from being ready to learning how to make sure that they can apply what they've learned to new opportunities. And so when you get into the workplace learning, it's about problem solving. It's about the opportunity to demonstrate that you can work collaboratively with others, that you can actually share the process of your learning and be able to demonstrate those skills that are necessary for your bosses, your supervisors, and your particular colleagues. And that's what our students have the opportunity to do in a seamless pathway that allows them to dual enroll at an earlier opportunity, to receive a paid internship, to earn a STEM Associate Applied Science degree, and then to possibly pursue a four-year degree or a job with our industry partner, IBM. Where we started as one school in 2011, there are now over 200 programs across 28 countries.
I'm muted, of course. Thank you, Mr. Davis, for sharing. So I'm going to pose the same question to one of our other panelists. Chad Thomas is the Director of Principal Engagement for Chicago Public Schools. With a wealth of knowledge and experience, Mr. Thomas has been serving students in a variety of ways throughout his lifetime, including work as a principal at Sullivan High School in Rogers Park. in July 2013, at a time when Sullivan had been on an academic probation for 13 years. He dramatically transformed the lowest performing high school on the north side of Chicago into a flourishing neighborhood high school. So, Mr. Thomas, can you please tell us a little bit about you and your background and what career-ready culture looks like in your environment?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here with such amazing educators in the panel and also attending, looking through the chat here. I'm 2 weeks into my new position here as the Director of Principal Engagement at Central Office, but the last decade I spent at Sullivan High School. And I just, when I first came into the school, I think we all know that the classroom model that we've started over 100 years ago with the industrial age is really broken. And for me, I think as we move more from a college going culture to, I really think, career then college going culture, sort of reversing that sort of paradigm, I think it all starts in the classroom. Right now, our classrooms don't look like the workplace in most schools. And really at Sullivan, we were trying to sort of reimagine the classroom and making it more personalized based on what students wanted to learn, what students needed to learn, and just change what that felt like for students. We don't sit in rows at our work. We don't wait for a bell to ring every 50 minutes to tell us where to go in our work lives. And that shouldn't be the case in our classrooms either. The other thing that we really, one strategy I'd recommend for schools across the country is, you can't just change overnight. You really have to think about the students that you serve and the families that you serve, but also the staff that are serving those families. So one thing we did at Sullivan is we created the grad at grad. So what does a graduate look like at graduation that is career and college ready? And we talked through those, and we did it in a way where we put these big posters up on the wall, and we talked about the head, the hand, and the heart. So what does a grad at grad look like in their mind? What are the things that they need to know to be ready for career? What are their passions? What is in their heart, right? And then the hand is really, how does it work? What does it look like to work? What does grit look like? So we made these big posters, and we over time with the staff to really get us focused on what a kid that leaves Sullivan looks like as a grad at grad and ready for career in college. And if you can kind of see the future, you can start to be the future, right? And so I think that was really important for our staff to do, because they're locked in on a 13 or 14-year-old and they can't see very much past that. And a 13 and 14-year-old can't see much past that. So we need to start thinking that they're adults when they're 14, and what are the skills they're going to need in the working world, in the ever-changing working world. So those are some of my top points just for now.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. We are going to move right along to continue the conversation, and I want to introduce Dr. Dara Ware Allen, CEO and Principal of City Charter High School, another educational interview who's made City Charter High School a model for innovation and inspiration. Dr. Allen, can you please tell us a little bit more about City Charter and what career-ready culture looks like for you?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this panel and the discussion. Career readiness culture at City High means career exploration, planning, and academic preparation. And most importantly, where students are active participants in developing their post-high school plans. And we try to do that through the design of the school, which is a model that I had long admired. I had a non-traditional path to education, to where I spent a lot of time in actually youth workforce development and career development, in addition to education, and saw City High as a model high school, within our city. Wanting that experience for all of our students that are in high school, of being able to have the kind of experiences that City High provides. And so that's an integrated career development curriculum starting at 9th grade, as well as integrated experiences for students to be able to explore the world of career possibilities, as well as getting in tune with their own skills and talents, and then culminating, with a 130-hour internship experience in their junior and senior year, where they get to test out what their interests are, whether they want to pursue that after high school, or whether they want to do something else, which is really important as well to find that out, before they graduate. And then I would also say that career readiness looks like brokering relationships with students outside of the school. And so we really work really hard at that, not only within the school, through our looping model and getting to know our students and lots of inputs into the post-high school planning process, but then also those critical relationships with area professionals and business leaders where they will be doing their internship experiences or going on other types of field experiences.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And finally, we would like to introduce Mrs. Courtney Collins-Shapiro. She's the launch leader for Porter Schools, the founder of Design, Build, Do Ventures, a strategic consulting practice she founded in 2019, focused on education and philanthropy. DBD closely advises and guides their clients as they seek to translate limited resources into major impact in the lives of children and young adults PK through 16. So, Mrs. Collins-Shapiro, I'd like to address the same question to you. What does college or career-ready culture look like in your organization?
Sure. So at Portal Schools, which is a new network of micro schools that we're launching in Los Angeles, we're taking pieces from lots of our colleagues on the call and sort of doing high school done differently. So PTech is really one of our sort of guiding lights in terms of what we do. We are micro schools that are blurring the lines between high school and college in a career immersive setting. So we're co-located at an employer site. So our young people actually are physically there at the corporate work site for their high school experience. We're also wrapping all of that in personalization. So we believe in competency-based learning, the concept of either you've mastered a concept or not yet. So it really gives us the flexibility to, again, think about how do you do high school differently in terms of the ways that young people can access content and access career relevant experiences. So I'm sure we'll talk more about what that looks like over the course of the morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much all for sharing. And I see the chat box is already blowing up. That's great. If you are at all like me, every time you hear from such amazing educators and professionals, you're taking a bunch of notes here on all of the ideas that you're coming up for your own situation. So I do the same thing, and I would love to elicit that type of interaction in the chat box. So if you have any ideas or want to shout out anything special that you do in your environment, we would love to hear it. We would love to see it, and I would love to learn from all of you because everybody has a natural and interesting route that they've taken to get to the point they're at right now. So while you guys keep blowing up the chat box, we'll jump in right to the questions. So my first question, I'm going to start from the back end and start with you, Courtney. And this question will be addressed to many of you, but how does college-ready culture differ from career-ready culture?
Sure. And I think this has evolved over time, right? And I spent most of my career in sort of college-ready charter organizations, right? So it was this sort of college for all philosophy. And as I've shifted over time, particularly at Portal, we don't actually see college-ready culture and career-ready culture as different. We see them as embedded because quite honestly, 99% of students are going to need some sort of career to support themselves and a family. And so while they might go to college, and we want them to be prepared to do so, that's a step along the journey, but the career is something that they'll be doing for a lifetime. So preparing students for the long game, it doesn't end with college, is a really important concept for us, and we need to prepare students to be competent to succeed in both. So for us, that looks like any opportunity you have in academic content to think about how do I weave in things that are relevant to a career pathway. So for example, students are studying geometry in the 9th grade, and there's an opportunity at our worksite to say, hey, there's someone who's doing corporate planning and space design. And they can come in and talk about, hey, as I'm thinking about laying out all of our corporate headquarters in 32 different countries, here's the way I actually use geometry in a daily basis. And then the designer can come in and say, here's how I actually use it in all of our marketing products and the things I put out on the web. Here's the ways I'm using geometry to think about the way I set up things spatially. And so young people, 14 years old are starting to hear like, oh, right, okay, so this thing I'm doing in math class actually has a relevant purpose for these people who have real jobs in the world, and it's not just one pathway. So I think it's really important to think about how do we make these things tangible for young people in the classroom. And again, I think when you're doing project-based learning, you have more opportunities to find ways to weave that in. So that's just one example, but I think they're the same. You have to be thinking about college and career is all part of this life continuum for young people.
So thinking about college and career in tandem is an important step in developing that culture. Dr. Allen, I see you nodding your head. Can you share a little bit about your thoughts on college-ready culture versus career-ready culture?
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with Courtney. That's why I'm nodding my head over here. Is I love the transition that we're moving into, where they were, so often talked about distinctively different. And I think that, having an integrated approach is important to helping students get a variety of experiences and education so that they're in the driver's seat and they can make more informed choices about which path they want to pursue. Because I think, as Courtney was saying, everyone is going to end up having a career, and it's just a matter of when that starts, whether directly out of school, concurrently while you're going to, a post-secondary program or college, or after you finish college and keep going. And so, I've always wanted to be, on my journey in education and in workforce development, of making sure that we're not limiting opportunities for students and really helping to give them as much information so that they can make informed, decisions beyond, those that are around them in the careers that they have. And though whether that is, a rich experience where they have a lot of people that they can look to, or if they have a smaller circle or network of individuals to look up to, and then really, helping to test what those, those interests are, and helping them to feel affirmed, about, those college or career choices. And so we really try to, like I said earlier, about a variety of field experiences, for students, helping them take inventories, and then getting, an immersive experience as an internship. And kind of how Courtney also mentioned, where there are direct applications within their classrooms, experiences that teachers, set up, directly related to a particular concept, or a professional, that can come and talk to them, that brings something to life and lights a spark, and supporting them along that path. So this is a great place that, like I said, that I think that we're transitioning and making sure that there are opportunities for students to get, coursework as well beyond high school, whether it's technical and or traditional, college, so that they are better equipped when they leave us, to be able to pursue those paths.
Great, thank you. Great response. And I really like what you said about you're kind of guiding students to affirm those choices that they're making, and helping them, guiding them to make the appropriate choices, and giving them experiences to be prepared to decide. So I'm going to move over to Rashid and pose the next question to you. So as our students move closer to high school graduation, what are the questions about college and career ready on the horizon? How does your school help support students in that decision-making process on where to go after high school and what happens next?
So because we are a grades 9 through 14 model, that means that every student has the opportunity to earn a free associate in applied science from our college partner, New York City College of Technology. So the conversation is really life after earning the 2-year degree, preferably. But then there are some students who may only earn some college credit. So the driver is high school really is 3 years and not 4. So at the end of the 3rd year of high school, how many college credits have you earned to make sure that you have a taste of college? So that way, December 1st of your senior year, when it's time to apply for life after PTech, you have enough college experience from New York City College of Technology to decide whether or not you want to stay to earn the free degree pathway. So it's really giving students, structuring the opportunities that allow students the early access, the early start. That's why we have a particular narrow focus in 9th grade that allows students to meet or participate in state assessments like English and math to demonstrate college readiness. so that way they can start taking college courses in 10th grade. Allowing them to be on that particular pathway gives them the opportunity by the end of 11th grade to hopefully experience at least a semester or a year's worth of college credit. So that way they have experience, so really know whether or not they want to continue. Because of having the immediate college partnership, it's already knowing that you're in college and whether or not you want to complete the 2-year degree, whether it's grade 12, 13, or 14, to think about going directly into industry or to think about going to a 4-year pathway. But it's really about a design that allows students to really move at their own pace, but to experience enough of college by the end of grade 11 that they could really make it an informed experience, whether or not to remain for grades 13, 14 for free, or to go to the traditional route of leaving after grade 12 with some college credits or no college credits at all.
Great, wonderful. I want to honor the fact that there's some good conversations going around in the chat as well. And one of the questions that's coming up is kind of trying to define and understand the difference between job and career, and if work ready is the same as career ready. So I'm going to kind of pivot that into our next question. Public and private partnerships play a key role in supporting career ready culture. Sometimes what that I have found in my experience as a principal is people come to us saying people are not ready to work, right? They don't have the skill sets to do any base level job, any entry level job, because they lack the communication skills or those soft skills. But career ready is a step beyond just being ready to go into any position, right? So thinking about the landscape, and Chad, I'm going to pose this question to you here. So thinking about the landscape and thinking about the environment you exist in, public-private partnership plays a key role in supporting career-ready culture. How does your organization work with partners to build a career-ready culture and make sure we are preparing students for good jobs and good careers and not just sending them off to get any old job?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us and I'm speaking, even though I work at the central office now, I'm speaking more as a former principal in my context there, and seeing our students. And for us, it really started sort of with the passions and really sort of unpacking whatever their passions are, and then taking their passions and then leading that to what a possible career could be, and then looking at your strength skills and your growth skills, and then determining, did you pick the passion that fits most of your strength skills? And if there are some growth skills, what can we work on to build those growth skills so you can get to that career? But it starts with, even before we meet them in freshman connections in the summer, we start, doing Myers-Briggs assessments, and we do things to try to analyze kind of who they are as a person, and then start building that, build that passion. And then once you have a passion, I tell the students that I've never really worked a day in my life because I did what I think I'm passionate about, and also what I'm, skill-wise good at. I'm a very social learner. I failed the 5th grade. At the 5th grade, they determined that I couldn't read. And so what I was doing to pass school was socially, getting in groups and getting with people I know could get the work done. And so being a principal is a very social job, right? And my weaknesses were, with print. And so I had to learn how to adapt to that world and that profession, but I really haven't worked a day in my life, honestly. And I really want our students at Sullivan to have that same drive towards career. If you can pick a career in your passions, then you go there. The other thing I'd like to say is when we get to that space and we send the students off to the internships, what's the most disappointing part of that work is really that the corporate world is not ready to receive the children. And what I mean by that is they often don't have like a job description of the internship. They don't have daily tasks for the students. So the kids come back a lot of times with their hands thrown up like, well, I didn't do anything. I just sat in a room and they told me to file stuff. So what we've had to do is pivot that and sort of coach the corporate world and what it could look like to have a Sullivan student at that office in that space, which takes a lot of time and energy. And that's really a gap in I think from education to career, and something that we need to think about in our districts and our schools of what that looks like. How can we coach corporate to receive internships for our students? Right now, it's, I would say, a very low success rate with those internships. And so sometimes the students come back to us like, I picked the wrong thing. I picked the wrong profession. No, you just didn't have clear direction at the office that you were serving in an internship. And so we've had to reimagine our private partnerships and coach them based on what the mission and vision of that corporation or organization was. So when we place an intern there, they are ready and set up for success. And so just something I wanted to call out. And I think I'm not sure sometimes that the corporate world or the private world is ready for our scholars to be there.
Chad, you make a really good point, and that's actually something for folks who haven't read it. Jobs for the Future's report around the big blur. That's one of the 4 things they talk about that's sort of missing and is a lever we need to push. And it's this sort of adults who are almost translators between the secondary, post-secondary sector and the employment sector. So how are employers going to be ready to receive and train young people in really tangible ways? And how can schools actually then translate on the other side what young people need to be ready? And sort of that whole set of folks who play that role as the translation in between the employment sector and the ed sector is something that they're really hoping through their research and some of their practice or to push folks across the country to start thinking about how do we invest there and do more to make that bridge happen.
What was the source that you cited in the first there, Courtney?
Jobs for the Future, they put out a report called The Big Blur, which is really going towards like Rashid's model, right? It's saying we should actually rethink in the United States, like how do we have an 11-14 sector so that young people really are ready to be doing more career-focused college work in 11th and 12th grade. And so why aren't we shifting more to an 11-14 model that's more aligned with what young people really need and what the employment sector needs at this point? It's a great report. People should take a look at it.
Yeah.
And whether or not industry itself, through diversity, through living through diversity realities, are they willing to embrace a younger workforce and actually learn that the traditional way that they demonstrate work and learning needs to change?
I just wanted to add that we've been fortunate too that in having, long-standing relationships, although we have newer employers too, especially during the pandemic where, workplaces changed and requirements changed with it, is employers that serve as partners who've really bought into, our mission and have had positive experiences, that they also begin to help orient individuals within their own organization. Those that will continue to take, or a department that will continue to take, a City High intern. And I'm sure there are, other organizations in your respective places too. But then talking within their organization and helping to coach alongside us, when we're preparing for another student to come on board. And so they're building their own institutional knowledge too about how to be more welcoming, I think, for young people and where they can succeed, because that is a part of, their mission as well, and wanting to be a good corporate citizen, or if the student is at a nonprofit, and cultivating, young people, that they have to build up their expertise. So having that longevity definitely makes a difference. And we learn from that as well, to be able to impart on to other host organizations. So it really is a collaboration that both of our respective organizations, benefit from, and then ultimately the student has a more successful experience.
Dr. Allen, can you expand a little bit on that? So what are some of the strategies you use to help prepare some of those organizations that are receiving your students?
Well, a lot of the work also goes into, the inputs that we put into our process, and also in the conversations, that we have with students. And our school is designed to be very relationship based, where we leverage that as our strength, and getting to know students holistically, getting to know them as learners, helping to cultivate them, as individual learners. And then that goes into the post-high school planning process, particularly for internship placements, to where every student has a plan, that is specific to them, with these inputs from, adults that have relationships with them, from their advisor to their internship manager to their grade level principal, if they receive learning support in terms of transition services. And so we really get to know our students and try to make appropriate matches. That definitely helps us in making matches. And then orientate like various strategies in terms of like helping to onboard, employee. So a series of like meetings, before the actual placement, a field visit, before, the first day, various things like that, where the students are able to ask questions. The host site is also able to ask questions and kind of troubleshoot, areas that may be of concern, follow the matching process. And then we check in on them and they know that they have support. And in the cases, like I said, where we have a longstanding relationship, they have additional people on that site that they're also able to turn to in addition to us about, making the most of that experience, to where they want, our City High students to stay, longer. And many of those lead into experiences, once they graduate. And that varies in terms of experience. It doesn't mean like they automatically get like a job, because everyone has different goals and an organization has also different goals. But there is definitely a relationship that continues in many cases with our students afterwards, even while the organization's maintaining the relationship with us.
Hmm. So it sounds like all of the panelists seem to be on the same page when it comes to, this is not just a process where we get students career ready, or we build this career ready culture and then send them off on their way. This is truly a collaborative and long-term process where you're looking at the industry, you're looking at the student, you're looking at their career pathways, you're looking at their choices, you're looking at their interests, and you're trying to help students find that key space. So thinking about that, and I appreciate you sharing your strategies that you've used, Dr. Allen. Does anyone else have any other useful strategies when it comes to working with these industry partners in building this career-ready culture at our high schools? And this is just an open-ended question.
Through the internship process for us, there are evaluations, and then the evaluations are very, very helpful, because students get to present almost like a capstone internship project at the end of each internship experience. And so feedback from the industry itself helps to be able to think about ways of designing new internship opportunities and bringing other departments on board. So it's not just the IT department, but different departments within IBM may be able to host students, and those evaluations from particular managers are very, very helpful. So that way, that students are getting real experiences and real opportunities, and also being able to show projects demonstrates the type of skills and the type of learnings that have taken place. But also within the school side, there are courses that are called workplace learning. We have a particular position, a liaison that's hired by industry that works in the school at least 3 days a week, that interacts with the faculty and staff, the parents, the students, and myself. So that way industry becomes a real fabric, a part of the fabric of our life. It's not an addition, but it actually becomes a seamless part of the culture. That makes it incredibly important. Also inviting the mentors, who are sometimes supervisors, into the building to do presentations, to host workshops after school, so that way they become familiar with the younger population, so that way they also can understand the changes that they need to make themselves to make sure that the industry itself is more inviting for a younger worker.
Yeah, I also think it matters to have, to use corporate language with your employer partners. And so thinking about the way in which they execute on things inside their own business, and sort of how do you use that language versus always using sort of edu speak. So for us with corporate partners, if part of it is like, I have to have a good point person on the site at the corporation who's going to sort of be our shepherd in-house, right? But then it's thinking about, what's the project plan, right? So, okay, if we want to have young people have the following 6 experiences over the course of the next year, how can we be really clear with that team to say, here's what we're hoping to accomplish. Does this meet your needs? How do you negotiate it out on the front end? So everyone's clear. Right now we're doing this with one of our corporate partners. It's May. We're talking about, these are the 6 experiences next year. Here's how many employees we need to participate. Here's when, here's where, here's what we're trying to accomplish, so that everybody knows very clearly what they're being asked to do and when, right? And so I think that the concept of approaching it like, here's the project plan, This is a really important experience. Here's how it meets needs for you as the employer, because you've done that, like listening and talking with them about why it matters to them. And here's exactly what we need, so that you can plug it into their corporate calendar. They can tell their employees exactly what's needed. I think that's really important, because sometimes I think on the ed side, there tends to be scrambling with like, we need 10 internships and we need 10 mentors. Okay. What does that look like? And giving people tons of notice in the corporate sector to say they can just plug this into their calendar and they can make this a corporate social responsibility thing, or it's in their talent shop. And so it's about a talent pipeline play, but being really clear, and then having that good go-to person on the inside, who's sort of your like employer whisperer, who knows the plan, who's sharing it and bringing the right people to the table, I think is really important.
I would like to formally request that we incorporate employer whisperer into our language as we are trying to connect with these partners, because I think that is really an important task. Okay, well, I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit, and Chad, we haven't heard from you, so I'm going to pose this one to you. So sometimes these public-private partnerships get a bad rap, with many believing that industry partnerships are too similar to kind of the vocational education models of the past. So how do you combat the negative stigma that sometimes exists when talking about career readiness and a career-ready culture?
I think for us, we've been sending our kids to a lot of these pro pathways events here. There's occasionally these pro pathways events, but not only sending the students there, we've been also sending teachers, groups of teachers there. Some of the mindset shifts really live within the adult mindset, not the child mindset. And sort of, I won't age myself and tell you my age, but I'll tell you that when I was in 8th grade, I had shop class, right? And so, but as you got older, you kind of transitioned out of shop class, right? And shop became the place where the construction worker guys were, right? But truthfully, I learned more in shop class than I did in all 4 years of algebra, right? So, and so my mindset going into it when I was a teacher and then and into the principalship, was that sort of old mindset that shop is for the kids that are going to be contractors and construction workers and things like that. So it's really important for the teachers to join the kids in that journey and us educate the teachers. So we brought out some pro pathways type fields. We've also brought in some of those people to talk about the skills that are needed in those professions to the teachers and educate the teachers through their grade level meetings and things like that. So I think a lot of this also, and as far as education, when you're trying to make a shift, it's oftentimes the kids are way further along in their mindsets than the adults. And so anytime you're trying to do this work that we're talking about today, it's really thinking about what is our current mindset of our adults in the building and how can we shift and educate those minds? Because if we don't shift and educate those minds, then the kids they'll always get that old tired mindset.
It is a lot about shifting that adult mindset. Rashid, do you have any additions to that question? How do you combat that stigma?
Well, it's not just a stigma of industry. When you're talking about trying to create these new paradigm shifts, you're talking about a different economic reality. And so when you look at STEM and you're talking about our particular pathway, you're talking about a huge percentage of students who are on free or reduced lunch. And so those particular students, when you look at the big global picture of education, they're not completing college at the same rates as middle or high income students, and they're definitely not completing STEM degrees. So because our STEM degrees are in computer sciences, we're talking about an economic trajectory that can be life-changing for the generation of students who come from deep levels of poverty. And so what we've seen is that how do you be intentional and strategic with sharing information about the importance of completing high school prepared, the mobility changes and the possibilities of life potential of those who graduate from high school, those who graduate from high school with some college credit versus a 2-year degree and a 4-year degree. So really being intentional and strategic to understand the social mobility of informing an underrepresented population that has not seen itself in the industry, specifically of the partnership that you become attached to. So it's not just changing the mindsets of industry, it's changing the mindsets of parents, it's changing the mindsets of educators to understand from an economic reality of how you're really trying to change the generational opportunities of some students who have historically been untapped for these realities because economically they have not been able to financially afford college in ways that middle and high income students have.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I keep jumping on and off of mute. Dr. Allen or Courtney, do you want to add to this conversation at all? Some of the things that you guys are doing to combat the stigma or to better build this culture?
Jump in. When I mentioned earlier about affirming student, choices, we can do that, especially when we are providing them, like I said, these lots of inputs and experiences to help them know what's out there, where that aligns with their skills and interests because they get a chance to test it, and then helping them to feel confident and safe, to say what they're actually interested in pursuing and knowing what the trajectory, is, for, their income and, supporting their family, as Rashid had mentioned. And I continue to be impressed as more and more of our students, they step out there and, where their family may want them to go to college and they have another plan for what they want to do. In getting, a more specialized, post-secondary, certificate or 2-year degree. And then in other cases too, where you have students who want to go to college and they want to get, as Chad was saying, like a hands-on, class, like mechatronics or something else that's going to help them in their engineering field. And so you have students that have different career goals. It might be in, one class, and they are together, with us trying to afford these experiences, having agency and directing like what they want to get out of, their high school experience, for that next step, and having some confidence about what they want to do. We continue to work with families as well and engaging them in those conversations. Helping the students to be able to speak up with their parents, but also using us as buffers, to be involved in that conversation, to help to provide some additional information to help, shift ideas that, our students can boldly step into their plans, while they're transitioning from us, into, post-high school life.
Great, thank you. And Courtney?
Yes, I think, if we're talking about like challenging the stigma around career readiness in the space, I would venture a guess that everyone who's on this panel, and certainly everybody who's dialing in here, we're all warriors for dramatically changing economic mobility for a generation of young people. And if we aren't thinking about career readiness, then there's a big problem, because we can talk about education as truth, love, and beauty. And at the end of the day, young people need to connect that to things that they can do, or they can, make a decent wage and support their family. So I think a lot of us, we're not necessarily looking at what traditional, tracking or vocational tracking. We're thinking about like, what are we going to do to get young people to high growth, high wage careers, right? And so folks, if we talk about people who are in the sort of top tier economic wise, right, there's access to social capital, networks, all sorts of things, right, where they're getting exposed. And when you're talking about young people who are in sort of that bottom quartile by income, they may not necessarily see the folks in those jobs or those career paths around them. And we need to find better ways to expose them. And that's not just having the career fair once a year, right? It's about really having them understand, look at all these, you don't know one who's an architect. Here's what it looks like to be an architect. Or engineering. Did you know that there are 35 different pathways you can take? Even just choosing an engineering major, most colleges have 6, 7, 8 different pathways for the degree. So really getting young people to understand, like, there are so many ways that you can go. And I also think that our economy is changing, right? So where we see the college degree as the golden ring, the bachelor's degree. And in many cases it still is. And I would always advocate that I want people to be prepared to do that and let it be their choice If they decide not to go finish that BA, great, but I prepared them to do so. But there are also, particularly in technology right now, there's lots of folks, if you talk about saying, hey, you can make 6 figures if you have a portfolio of work and you have actual skills in artificial intelligence, or some of these other things. Amazon Web Services is like blowing up the earth. There's a whole lot of pathways for very high paid careers for folks if they go out and seek those skills, but that's about a portfolio. That's not even necessarily about a degree. And you could be giving young people those skills when they're 15, 16, 17 years old, where they graduate with an associate's degree and real skills in their portfolio, and they can go make very serious money with a path to higher paying, much more interesting job. So I think we have to stop sort of saying like, oh, it's tracking and you're not giving kids all these opportunities, because I think it's a fallacy. We do actually have to expose our young people to all the things that are out there for them and get them ready.
Great. Wow, you guys all make a bunch of brilliant points, and I'm sure I could talk to you all day about this. But I do want to honor the time. It is 10:48, so I'm going to open the chat and see if anyone in the chat has any questions they want to ask the panel. I'm going to scroll up here because there was a question I noticed here. What are the barriers that you see to creating a national or state integrated system of career job training with employers, both large and small, with the K-12 system? So does anyone want to jump in and answer that question? It's a big one.
Repeat it again, I'm sorry.
What are the barriers that you see to creating a national or state integrated system of career job training with employers?
So, well, the PTech is globally across 200 partnerships in colleges. So we can talk about 12 states, and specifically in 2021, 7 states produced PTech STEM college graduates during the pandemic with multiple industry partnerships. So we meet monthly as a network with our particular industry partner, IBM, to talk about plans. We a few years ago did a global PTech conference where we brought participants in industry from around the globe. But it's really about the same way you would do at the local level. It's about being intentional of bringing people together to share best practices and to try to make sure that you could have the interconnectedness of what's not working, what's working, what needs to definitely be improved. So that way you can continue to adapt. If anything that we've learned from the reality of COVID, we've helped industry and colleges deal with the dual enrollment and the virtual reality of internships and job hiring with a younger population because of the partnerships that are with PTech. And so we continue to grow on the interactions of professional development and industry development with the connectedness of high school, college, and industry.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is the Margaret Mead quote, "Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can accomplish as much as possible." I'm murdering the quote here, but you guys get the point. We have to start with these collectives and start to develop these ideas. And we have to show success before we can move bigger and proof of concepts. I have a follow-up question for you, Rashid, not related to that, but this is a good question for all of you. So an anonymous guest asked, who gets into the PTech programs? So I would like to open that bigger. Like, what are your entrance criteria for your schools to make sure that we understand what students we're recruiting?
So, we opened as a no academic screening, no test for admission. So when we took in students, you're talking about taking in more than 30 to 40% of the students who were behind in grade level. Now, in the last 2 years, New York City removed the limited unscreened admissions criteria, but the first 6 cohorts of students, and even 7 cohorts of students, were students who had no academic screening or no test for admission, which means that we had to be intentional and strategic of how we use time. We are a year-round model with a longer school day and a longer school year to be able to try to meet students where they are and be able to accelerate learning and able to anticipate learning loss because of students coming in behind the 8 ball with standardized tests. So before COVID, we were already dealing with learning loss and accelerating learning. And that is why in 2021, 7 states were able to use our model and demonstrate that PTech students could be college students 3, 4, and 5 years after 9th grade.
Great. What is the entrance criteria at City Charter like?
We are, a public charter school, and so there is no entrance requirement, so any student who is, a resident within the city of Pittsburgh and the surrounding county is able to, apply, and then it is, until all of our seats are filled, and then there's a wait list. And like Rashid said about, we're getting students from all over, the city, and like I said, and surrounding counties. So students are coming from a variety of areas. I think our upcoming class, we have, over 60 different school districts that are represented. And we also have a year-round model and a longer school day, hoping to, with the goal of, mitigating, learning loss that sometimes happens over, the breaks, and then the looping, playing a huge role with that in terms of teachers, not having to relearn their students. So that has helped, that definitely, has helped us for the range of students that we have. And our goal is to be able to grow each student, as a learner by getting to know them and the expertise, that our staff bring.
Great, thank you. And Courtney and Chad, so I'm going to say, are you both open enrollment schools?
So Portal in its founding year we're launched as an independent school in Los Angeles. So we're agnostic to governance model as we grow, but we do have control over sort of who we admit. But our commitment is to low income first gen kids. And because we're competency based, we have the capacity to meet kids where they are. We're also small micro schools, right? So the personalization where I can have young students who are at 3 different levels in terms of their learning, and we can figure out how to wrap the right supports around young people. So we found that to be really helpful. And because we believe in diverse by design, what is also happening for us is we're trying to make sure that the campus is diverse in all ways, right? So income, race, ethnicity, thought, and we're really able to curate sort of a class of 60 young people at each micro school in a way that really reflects the greater society and benefits student learning across all genres. So it's really exciting for us. But yeah, we are seeing, and I know all of you post-COVID, ninth graders or 7th graders.
Right.
And if they were 9th graders who were 4 years behind, they now might be 6 years behind. So there is a lot going on out there with learning loss. And I think that's really challenging for educators right now in terms of thinking about how do you remediate just lost years for young people out there and get them up to speed so that they can be college and career ready when they leave us.
And Chad?
Yeah, I mean, we're just a neighborhood high school, but we're probably one of the more unique neighborhood high schools in Chicago. We have over 40 languages spoken at Sullivan, and over 66% of our students speak a second language, and nearly 40% of our population is special education students. Recently, a book came out called Refugee High about Sullivan, basically following us around for about a year. And sort of seeing the lives of the refugees, from students that are from refugee camps to, Chicago public education. It's a fascinating story if you get a chance to read it. And so, and since December, we've had 60 families enroll from Afghanistan, and we're anticipating, a large number of Ukrainian families soon. So anytime there's a world crisis, 6 months to 8 months later, you find it at Sullivan in Chicago.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And everybody talked a little bit about the diversity of your school environments. We are running out of time, but I did want to say, that is an important point to end on here is career readiness, or a career ready culture is really to meet the needs of all students, not just one demographic, not just one area, not just one person. So it is really important that we are focusing on that career ready culture in our schools and in our society so that we can build a positive culture along the way. With that said, Rashid, thank you for putting the actual quote here in the chat. I want to thank this panel for being my small group of thoughtful, committed citizens that can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. You guys are changing the world every day, and I really appreciate the commentary that you shared with us today. If you could take a moment and share maybe your LinkedIn link in the chat so that our participants can connect with you in other ways, that would be great. And I'm going to invite schools that can back online to close us out.